Welcome to the Comedy Reset Spotlight. This is the place to be if you want to hear from some of the most innovative and exciting comedy creators from around the globe. On this podcast, you'll hear from a variety of guests who are pushing the boundaries of what comedy can be. If you're looking for fresh perspectives and new ideas, this is the podcast for you.
Episode 13. Texas comedian Cory Brooks.
When did you first start doing stand-up comedy?
I first started doing stand-up comedy about 3 years ago. I went to a couple of open mics just to check them out, not to actually get on stage. I was a little chicken at that time, and I was still writing my material and trying to get it a little perfected before I got the nerve to actually get up on stage. So I finally got the nerve up, and I went to one of the open mics, and my brother was there and my sister-in-law were there, so they recorded it for me, which was fun because I got to look back and see how I did. Because once I got up there, I kind of went into autopilot, I guess. I didn't hear the responses or what was happening. I just was up there trying to remember what I was trying to say. And so I did it. I got the nerve. It came out good. I got a good response. And I thought, that was a lot of fun. I think I'm going to keep doing this.
What made you want to become a stand-up comedian?
Well, I worked in radio for a while, and I had gone to broadcasting school with a gentleman who actually did very well in radio, and he has actually hosted a morning show for the last 15 years. And I like to listen to him. So I was listening to him, and it's an all-male show. And they do a lot of women bashing, but not like in a mean, cold way. It's kind of funny, but they were talking about all of the negative things about women, about older women in particular, and about how when you get to a certain age, you should just give up. And when you get to a certain age, you're not attractive anymore. And when you get to a certain age, just all these negative things. And I'm sitting there thinking, gosh, that's me. All of those things are me. But I didn't consider it a negative thing. So I thought, you know what? I can flip this and I can make it a positive thing and I can make it funny. And so that is what made me decide to get into stand-up comedy.
Who were some of your influences?
Who are my influences? I would say that the comedians that do the storytelling are my influences because that's the style of comedian I am. I love the storytellers because they really can get you to relate to experiences they've had because you can say, oh my gosh, that happened to me. But at the time, you may not have thought it was funny. And the way they put it made it really funny. So that can kind of change your outlook on some things that have happened to you in life. And I, like Angela Johnson, is a great storyteller. I love listening to her, and she's so animated and fun to watch. And Lynn Koplitz, I love her. She has stories that I can really relate to, and she's one of those that can take something that could possibly be considered taboo or negative and flip it and make it funny and make it a positive thing, shall we say. So I guess my influences would be the storytellers and the ones that can poke fun at themselves and get the audience to laugh at them with them, not just, laughing at them.
What was your first time on stage like?
My first time on stage was very nerve-wracking. I was sitting at the table waiting for my turn at the open mic, and I was watching all the other comedians and hoping nobody had the same material that I had because that is always a drag. And my lips were shaking, and I thought, I'm not much of a drinker, but I'm going to have to do something here. So I had a Kahlua and cream and hoped that that would help the lip quivering, because I didn't want to get up there and not even be able to talk. And finally, I got called up, and I went up there and went into autopilot, had my script in my head and just went through it. And I really didn't hear the responses and the laughter, because I think I was so nervous that all I was doing was trying to remember what I was saying. So luckily, my brother had recorded it so I could look back and see how it went. And apparently, it went pretty good. When I got off stage, my lips were quivering even more, I guess, from coming down off the rush. And I was approached by some of the audience members, and they said that they really enjoyed my skit bit. And I had one of the local comedians come up to me and tell me that I did really well, and that I was just as good as some of the seasoned local comedians, and that I should really keep doing that. So I thought that was a pretty positive response, and decided, yeah, I think I'm going to keep doing this.
What's your favorite joke?
My favorite joke or bit that I do is when I talk about my body parts as I've gotten older, certain things sagging, whether I like it or not. And so I'll refer to my different body parts in interesting, descriptive ways. Like, for instance, I say that my butt looks like a cardboard box that someone has left out in the rain, and that my knees have sagged and look like they need to be circumcised. Sometimes I'll even show the audience my knees, and that gets a good chuckle. And I refer to them as my uncircumcised dick knees. And then I refer to my lady bits as squid lips, which, as soon as I say that, people just start laughing or shaking their head or covering their face like, I can't believe she just said that. And I talk about how they enjoy swimming. And even though there's a surgery that can fix that, I think that I would rather keep them as is, because at my age, I would much rather have ugly little squid lips that could get me across the ocean than a little pink helicopter that couldn't even get me across the street. And so that's my favorite joke.
What's the worst heckler experience you've ever had?
This is a interesting question to me, because I've never really had a heckler experience where an audience member has heckled me, but I was at an open mic, and one of the other comedians during his bit almost like was heckling me, because I was up next, and so I was setting up my little camera so that I could record my set, because I like doing that, comparing what I can do better, what I did bad, what I can cut out, what I can keep. And so as I'm setting up my camera, he zoned in on me and was just like, "Are you recording me?" And I said, "No, I'm not recording you. I'm up next." And I was just setting up my camera. But he didn't let it go. I don't know what he was wanting from me. I don't know if he was wanting to get into a banter, or I don't know what happened, but he kept asking me and kept pointing out that I was recording him, and I was just so baffled, because I feel like he ruined his whole set trying to talk to me and talking to me about my camera, instead of just doing his thing and engaging with the audience in a positive way. And I thought that was really weird, and it wasn't like the guy didn't know who I was. We'd been to several open mics together, so I was very confused with the whole thing, and I just kind of did my thing. And when he was done, I went up and did my thing, and just went on with my life.
What's the best gig you've ever had?
The best gig I ever had was Christmas of 2021. I had gone to El Paso to visit my mom, who is getting ready to be 93 years old. And she had never seen me live, so I was really excited, because I had talked to one of the local guys and asked him if I could get on the show that they were doing, and he welcomed me with open arms. I thought that was wonderful. And so and my son and pretty much my whole family got to see my show, and I pulled it off. I didn't mess up. I got a lot of great laughs, and it just was a win-win. That whole night was a win-win. So that was my very best show. I enjoyed it. I had fun, and another part that made it great was my son never got to see me live. He had heard some of my things, and he's kind of critical, and he was just a little bit like, when he would hear my things, he'd be like, yeah, well, some people don't have the same sense of humor as you, and whatnot. And I think seeing me live and seeing the audience reaction really kind of changed his view on it, and that made me very happy because you know he's my son. His opinion does matter. And so it was a great show all around, and it was really nice that my mom got to see it live before anything happened, because she is getting older, and I thought that was a really wonderful experience for everybody.
What's the worst gig you've ever had?
The worst gig I ever had was at one of the local clubs. I had heard that the owner was looking for new acts to do some shows. So I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to get out there and get more in the mix, and maybe get on a few more shows. And so I went, and pretty much everybody that was there was other comedians. There weren't but maybe one or two people that had come in off the streets and were watching the comedians. So I was waiting, and I was up next, and the host skipped me. So I was no longer up next, and I let him know that he had skipped me. So he said, well, so and so's up next, and then so and so and so and so, and then I'll put you up after this person. So I was like, okay. And I was waiting and waiting. And by the time I got up on stage, the lady who was doing the looking for new talent was gone. She had left. I guess she had other things to do and take care of. So I did my thing, and I got the few laughs that I got. And it just turned out to be a really dud night, because there wasn't anybody left but other comedians, and they'd seen my thing, I don't know how many times.
How do you deal with stage fright?
How do I deal with stage fright? Well, you would think that growing up in dance and the theater and all those fun things, and being on stage as much as I was growing up and in school, I wouldn't have stage fright anymore, but that is not true. I still get stage fright, and the way I deal with it is just really practicing and knowing my material and being as comfortable as I can possibly be with my material. Because then if something happens and I stumble, or I forget something, or I get, a bigger laugh than I thought I was going to get, or God forbid a heckler interrupts and throws me off a little bit, I can kind of recover pretty quickly and get back on track without too big of a oops, and where was I? So that's my best way of dealing with it, is just being prepared as well as I can, and knowing my material and being as comfortable as possible with that material.
What was the most unexpected response you've ever gotten to one of your jokes?
I think that the most unexpected response I ever got was when I went up for the very first time, and I thought I was shaky and nervous, and I felt shaky and nervous. But when I got off stage, people were like, no, you didn't look very nervous. And when I looked back on the recording, I wasn't very nervous appearing. And having one of the seasoned comedians come up to me and tell me that I was just as good as some of the other seasoned comedians was a very shocking response, because I didn't feel like that while I was on stage. So being told that afterwards was quite a compliment, and really a good way to end my first time up. Kind of let me know that it was something that I could do. And since I really enjoyed it, it was something that I wanted to do.
How do you prepare for a show?
The first thing I do to prepare for a show is find out how much time I'm given, because that's very important. And I found out that it's considered rude if you go over your time, and you really have to make sure that you know your material well enough that if you do get heckled or you stumble or something happens, you get a good laugh that's longer than you thought, that you can still keep your material and your bit within your time frame. So I get my timer and I practice and I remove things that may not be necessary, or I add things if I have more time to give myself more time. I get more elaborate with my bit. So it's a lot of tweaking and a lot of timing and a lot of practicing and going over it to the point that I'm so comfortable with my material that in case anything bad happens, I can recover and keep going.
What's the best advice you've ever been given about stand up comedy?
The best advice I was given was at a workshop with Steve Trevino, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say names, but he was the one doing the workshop. And he was explaining how every market has a local scene, of course, and there's always one or two comedians in that local scene that kind of try and run things and are always booking their friends and things like that. And he said, just, let them do their thing, but don't let them guide your career. Do what you need to do, show up at the different clubs, be helpful, be kind, do free shows, just get on stage as much as you can and enjoy it. Have fun with it. Don't ever let it be a grind, and don't ever have your focus be about making money. Have it be about fun and getting out there and getting on stage. And that's what I've been trying to do. I've listened to that, and I don't let anybody get me down or block me from doing things. I just kind of do my thing, and the more I get on stage, the better I get, and the more comfortable I get, and I enjoy it. So I really don't care if there's money involved or not. If I get asked to do a show, or if I get asked to come out and perform, I'm more than happy to do it. It doesn't even matter what the payout is, because for me, the payout is getting on stage and getting the laughs.
What's the worst advice you've ever been given about stand up comedy?
I've been told a lot of negative things, like people don't like female comedians and that I started too late in the game. But I think the worst advice I ever got was at a writer's workshop. A guy pointed me and another female comedian that I was sitting with out and said that we were not going to do good in the business because we were attractive. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, thanks for thinking that we're attractive, but I thought it was kind of a silly thing to say. And he went on to say that the reason we wouldn't do well in the business is because the audience would automatically not like us based on our appearance. So I thought to myself, well, there's a lot of absolutely gorgeous female comedians out there, and I don't think that they're bad or dislike them just because they're pretty. I still want to hear what they have to say, and if they're funny, they're funny. It doesn't matter what they look like. So I thought that that was just a very weird, kind of silly thing to say, and it was definitely the worst advice I've ever gotten.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about stand up comedy?
I think the biggest misconception about stand-up comedy is that we all got jokes. When I tell people that I do stand-up comedy, they go, "Oh, tell us a joke." And it's like, well, it's not like that. I don't just tell jokes, because I more tell stories, but that's one of them. And then the other one is that it's just easy. Anybody that was the class clown or that is the life of the party at any given time can just get up there and act silly and act stupid and tell jokes and be a stand-up comedian. I think those are the two biggest misconceptions. I think it's hard work. It's fun work, but it's hard work, and it takes a lot of time to get things written and polished and be able to have a script but pull it off naturally like it's not a script. It takes a lot more than just getting up there and telling a few jokes, and I think that's the biggest misconception.
What do you believe is the key to success in stand up comedy?
I would like to say that talent is the key to success in stand up comedy, but I don't believe that's actually the key. I know it takes patience and perseverance, but mostly I believe that the key is getting yourself out there so that one day, hopefully, you'll be in the right place at the right time and the right person will see you and think that you've got something and want to invest in you and want to pull a leap of faith with you and kind of get you going, because there are a lot of very talented comedians out there that never do catch a break. That doesn't make them less talented. That just means that they didn't get in front of the right person. And so, truly, I think the key to success in pretty much anything is being in the right place at the right time and being able to get in front of the right person.
What do you think is the biggest obstacle that stand up comedians face?
I think that the biggest obstacle stand-up comedians face is trying not to get discouraged. There's so many things that can discourage anybody in life in general, much less putting yourself out there and getting personal with a bunch of people you don't know and being on stage and hoping that the audience has the same sense of humor as you, and sometimes they don't and you bomb and you have to just act like, well, that was just a practice show and keep on going, because not all the audiences are going to be like that. If you have good material and you're funny, you're going to bomb, but you're also going to have good shows, and you need to hang on to those good shows and not let yourself get discouraged by the bad ones.
What do you think sets stand up comedy apart from other forms of comedy?
Well, unless you're super famous, I think what sets stand-up comedy apart from other forms of comedy is the solo aspect of everything. You do your own writing. You're up there by yourself in front of the audience. Once in a while, you'll see duo comedy teams and things like that, which are a lot of fun because they can play off of each other. But for the most part, it's just you, a microphone, and sometimes a bar stool and something to drink. But other than that, I do believe that not having writers, not having directors, not having a crew and other actors and comedians with you to play off of each other, I think that is what sets stand-up comedy apart from other forms of comedy.
What are the benefits of stand up comedy?
For me, the benefits of stand-up comedy are extremely therapeutical, because I am getting older and I am noticing a lot of changes, and they could be very depressing if I let them, or I could just let myself criticize myself. But instead, I choose to flip it and make it a positive thing and make it a funny thing. And I just put myself out there, and the more I do, the more I feel like I risk getting criticized or getting put down. But I feel like, you know what? I'm at a time in my life where I've had enough of the put downs, and it's time to throw it back at you and make it a uplifting. And I really enjoy it as an audience member as well. There's so many different takes on so many different experiences and so many different jokes about the same premise maybe, but it's fun to listen to different people's twists and turns on things, and it's really fun to know that you're not the only one that has experienced certain things. So when you see a comedian up there telling a story that you can really relate to, that is also therapeutic because you don't feel so all alone.
What's your process for writing jokes?
My process for writing jokes is I figure out what I want to write about, and then I write it down as if I'm talking to a friend and as if I'm just telling them a funny story that happened to me. And then I go through it and I start to chop it up and make it a little more punchy and a little less wordy. And then I may have to change some wording around to make things a little more relatable. And I may have to spice it up a little bit and exaggerate things a little bit to make it funnier. So there's a lot of writing and rewriting and rewording and putting things in different orders to make it flow better. And also, I'll do a lot of stuff more chronologically, because if I remember it chronologically, then I am less apt to forget where I'm at in a story. So that's really the way I write it. And I'll jot down things that come to me. If I'm just at work or driving in the car, I'll write something down real quick, and then I'll go back and look at all my notes and go, oh, I can write a whole thing on that, or I can add that to this bit that I've already got. And so I'll work it in and just word it and rewrite it and rearrange it until it makes sense and it's punchy and quick and funny. And then I get out there and try it. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, well, back to the drawing board.
What's the most important thing for a stand up comedian to remember?
I think that the most important thing for a stand up comedian to remember is to have fun. That energy and that positivity, it just spills over to the audience. Even if you're not the funniest comedian on the stage, just your energy and knowing that you're having a great time and the audience seeing that you're having a great time is going to make all the difference in the world. I've watched comedians who it's not fun for them anymore, and they may have great material, but they're up there acting like it's just a drag and it's like pulling teeth to try and get a laugh. And it doesn't have to be that way because their material's good. They're just putting it out there like they're bored. And so if they act bored, the audience is going to be bored, no matter how good their jokes are. So really just have fun, keep that positive energy. And it doesn't matter if you have a good show or a bad show, just put that smile on and put your funny pants on and be happy and positive and have a great time.
What do you think are the best techniques for dealing with hecklers?
I think that the best techniques for handling hecklers is to get a good, simple one liner that will shut them down in a funny, not too terribly insulting way so that you can move on with your show. When you get into a banter, some comedians are good at it. Some are really good at the improv and can get into the banter. But more often than not, when the heckler starts getting into a back and forth with the comedian that's on stage, the heckler kind of takes over the show. And you don't want that to happen. You want to keep control of your show and your stage time. And the best way I feel is to just get a simple one liner that's funny and can kind of shut them down and move on with your show.
What do you think are the biggest mistakes that stand up comedians make?
I think that the biggest mistakes that stand up comedians make are one, getting angry at the audience if they're not laughing at their jokes, or calling the audience out for not having the same sense of humor as they have. You know, every audience is different. Some of them are your audience, some of them are not your audience. You kind of have to get to know your audience so that you know sort of what to expect. And if you get great laughs out of an audience you didn't think you were going to get laughs out of, even better for you. But I think that I get embarrassed for the comedian on stage when they're telling their jokes and they'll say, "Oh, well, I can't believe you guys didn't think that was funny. You guys are a tough crowd." I feel embarrassed for the comedian because it's not so much that it's a tough crowd, it just may not be their crowd. And pointing it out and pointing fingers and calling people out is just a really negative way to respond. And I think that just leaves the audience with a bad taste in their mouth, whether they liked you or not.
What is the best way to learn stand-up comedy?
I think that the best way to learn stand up comedy is through trial and error. Getting up there, having the nerve to get on that stage, that's one of the biggest parts of it. And being prepared to fall on your face and get back up and try again. That's a big part of how to learn to be a stand up